Hello everyone and welcome to the new SEGA News Bits. Pull out your sports tape because Sonic Boom is back. At least Sonic Boom Fire and Ice is out, and I'm here with Barry, who's gonna give us his first impressions in the game that came out earlier today, or yesterday, or whenever we put this up on the YouTube channel.
Yeah, and so I did get my hands on a review copy from SEGA. I'm very appreciative of that. I'm doing a little bow right now. Unfortunately, it came a little too late, and so instead of rushing to get a review out today, I'm going to give myself a little time, get it out there, likely early next week. That's my goal, maybe like Monday. Because, you know, it's out there now, people know how the game plays. It's gotten rather decent scores, and so this is just going to be my impressions on the game. I played it for about 1 hour today, about an hour and a half. So I'm just gonna tell you what I thought of it. And so I originally reviewed Sonic Boom Fire and Ice, or Shattered Crystal for the Nintendo 3DS, and I was not too friendly towards it, but I was nice enough to say that, you know, there was a good game there, but there were some issues. For example, I didn't like that they had those little roadblocks where they'd say, oh, you didn't collect enough gems or crystals or whatever, so you can't proceed, and then you have to go back through and backtrack a level. The stages were very big, 10 to 15 minutes. They were kind of like labyrinth. People referred to it as like Metroidvania kind of style, and it, you know, it played like a Sonic game, but it didn't. And there's always that question, well, this is a new franchise, it's kind of a spin-off, so you shouldn't really, you know, give the game's crap for saying that it plays differently because it's Sonic Boom, it's not Sonic the Hedgehog. But at the same time, if it's going to play differently, at least play differently well. You know what I mean? So, you know, overall, you know, that issue has changed. That's gone. You can just play the game, which is great. You proceed. You can even skip certain things, like there was like a high-speed stage in the other ones that I believe were, you had to play them. In this one, they're optional. There's also little Tails has a little sea fox, and it's a little submarine, and those were, I believe, embedded within the stages before. Now they're optional on the map screen. Again, you don't have to play them. I did play a boss stage. It was actually, it was probably one of the better 2D Sonic bosses that I've played in a while. It was cool. It, you know, took up both screens. It reminded me actually of the classic Sonic Rush DS bosses, and you switched between Sonic and Amy, and there were some, you know, clever little uses of the fire and ice there. As far as cutscenes, it opened with a fully animated cutscene that resembled the TV show, and then within the game there were actually in-game cutscenes, which I personally thought looked pretty good for a 3DS game. You know, nothing mind-blowing, but it at least put the original Sonic Adventure cutscenes to shame in terms of, you know, how well they were animated and how the characters were moving. Yeah, I mean, all in all, I'm feeling positive about it. I feel like it's addressing a lot of the problems I had. George, is there anything you wanted to grill me on about the game?
Yeah, like, the one thing I didn't like about the demo, and I'm assuming the demo that we played at the Sonic 25th anniversary event is one of the first levels in the game, right?
Yes.
Okay, does it have a lot of switching and, like, buttons? Like, one of the things I didn't like is, like, everything had its own button. Like, oh, you want to jump, and then you want to, like, home attack, that's its own button. Oh, you want to switch, it's another button. You want to do fire, you want to do ice. There's a lot of switching, or did they kind of kill that gimmick going in?
Unfortunately, no, that's still there. You know, the fire and ice are on the triggers. There is a boost button, there's a enter beam button, and then there's a special skill button. And so all of the buttons are, and then the jump button, obviously, and all the buttons are utilized. If you want to...
And then there's the switching characters, the D-pads, right?
Yeah, I believe you use the D-pad, and you also can tap the screen. I was tapping the screen, mainly because actually, you know, switching between characters was something you could do on the fly, but it wasn't something I was finding myself doing on the fly. I'd come up to a point and go, oh, I need Amy, so I'd just casually switch between them. I never felt like I was over a death pit, and it was like, you gotta switch to Sonic to Amy real quick. I guess if you were speed running, you'd need to do that, but it's still there. If you don't like that sort of gameplay style, which I'll admit I didn't like when they used it in some of the later levels in Sonic Unleashed, when you'd be, you know, boost, jump, do that weird button press thing when he goes in the air, you know, strife side to side. It's nowhere near as crazy as that, but it still is something that I can totally understand people who like Sonic wouldn't like that sort of gameplay style. So if you don't like tons of different button presses And if you don't like, I guess I would say almost that kind of reactionary gameplay where you're like, oh, there's a thing, press A to use the thing, press this to use that. I can understand why you wouldn't like it. There are button prompts, but it's almost like after a while, it's kind of annoying to see the A button flashing on the screen, you know, above the thing that needs the A button. It almost feels like a QTE.
Yeah.
It's not, but yeah.
So when we played the other games, the Sonic Boom games from past, you could tell right away that the game was rushed. Do you feel like this is more polished already, just in the hour that you were in?
For sure, yeah. This is definitely a lot more polished, and I'd even say that they learned a lot from the past game. And I don't know how much control Aaron Weber and his people had with this game. But I do recall that back when Aaron was with Sega before he left and then came back, on Sonic 4 he would point out certain things to the team that were so obvious, but only a Sonic fan like him would notice. For example, I remember in Sonic 4 you'd hit the goalpost and then you'd hit the edge of the wall, and Sonic wouldn't leave the stage. And I remember Aaron saying, you know, Sonic really needs to leave the stage because that's how the games work. And they implemented that. And so it could have been that, you know, once they had the changeover in management with the Sonic Boom, with all of Sega, really, it could have been that Aaron had a few, you know, things to say, and maybe even the team themselves felt that needed to be tweaked. Yeah, everything felt more polished. I will say I feel like the music has a step down. It suits the game, but it's not memorable. I'm not really humming anything. Whereas with Shattered Crystal, like right now, I'm trying to think of some of the melodies, and they're in my head. Like I can remember them. I can remember the first stage music and the rush music.
It's funny because like when it comes to Sonic games, even if the Sonic games are shitty, I still remember the music. Like Sonic 06 had a pretty good soundtrack for, you know, not being a great game. The soundtrack is still great. I could listen to the soundtrack and I could like it, but it's kind of weird that this one doesn't have a memorable soundtrack. It's like that's the one thing that Sonic games usually get, you know?
Yeah, you know, it's just kind of it's better than Rise of Lyrics soundtrack. It's not as good as Shattered Crystal, which I believe had Richard Jacques contributing some tracks too. I don't think he did the whole soundtrack, but here, you know, it feels like they made music that suited the game, that sounds good when you're playing, but you're not going to be, you know, humming anything. Whereas Studiopolis Zone and Sonic Mania, we demoed that. The next day, I'm still humming, you know, but here I'm like thinking Sonic Mania, and I'm trying to, or Sonic Boom, Fire and Ice, and I'm trying to think, and it's kind of like,
yeah.
I can't catch anything. Even the title screen music, it's just, you know, it's adventure-y, kind of poppy, techno-y kind of music. It's not bad, but I'm not going to buy a soundtrack or download the music or anything.
Another question I had was like when they first announced Sonic Boom tie-ins with the game, they always like kind of made it seem like, oh, these will like directly tie with the TV show, and then we watched the TV show and then we played the games and they kind of had nothing to do with each other. Like there was no such thing as lyric in the TV show. Like the show basically pretended that the games never happened. Is this something that also happens with this game, or is there like callbacks to episodes or anything for fans like that?
Well, I can't say for sure. Season 2 has yet to come out. However, you know, this game has a new little enemy. He's on the front cover. I can't remember his name. I want to call him Exhibit, but I know it's not, I know that's the rapper's name.
Yeah,
but
the rapper.
It's like, it's Defect.
Defect?
Like D, the number D, like the letter D and then Defect. So I don't know if he's going to show up in Season 2. I don't know if Lyric will return. But then again, I feel like with this game, they're not pushing that. They're not saying, oh, it's a big shared universe and you're going to see Lyric and the other stuff. Here, it's, you know, it's just an adventure with Sonic Boom characters in it. I don't see any of the villagers from the TV show. They do mention the village, however. I feel like Eggman himself is a bit, you know, more humorous. It also helps that they actually include a bonus DVD of 3 episodes featuring Sonic, Shadow, and Metal Sonic. So they still are pushing the TV show with this, but nah, in terms of like a shared universe or the game impacting the TV show, I wouldn't count on.
So overall, do you recommend it for people that like the TV show, or do you think that maybe they should hold off on the release? at least for 1 hour of gameplay that you had.
If you like the TV show, I'd pick up the game. I'd say this is the best Sonic Boom game, which, you know, you could say, well, that's not too difficult to say, but it isn't too difficult to say. I would say if you are a longtime Sonic fan, I'd play a demo. If there is one out there, I'd read some reviews, see if this is for you. If you're really itching, you know, like to play a Sonic game and you know that spring 2017 is still a ways off, then I'd get it once it maybe drops in price, or if you feel like the 20% off Amazon Prime discount is enough of a discount for you. It's not a must-buy title, at least from my first hour of playing, but it's not a ignore title, if that makes sense.
So, if you guys bought the game, let us know in the comments below what you thought. And thanks for listening.
And don't hate me.
That's your last thing. Please don't hate me.
Don't hate me. Do you like Sega? Do you want Sega news? Visit SEGAbits.com and don't forget to visit us on all of our major social networks.